Paul Vario, a prominent figure in the American Mafia, was associated with the Lucchese crime family. Known for his involvement in various criminal activities, he rose to notoriety for orchestrating a major heist at John F. Kennedy International Airport in 1978, where millions were stolen from a vault. Vario's criminal career spanned decades, and he was considered a powerful and influential figure in the underworld of New York City. His leadership within the Lucchese family solidified his reputation as a cunning and respected mobster. Despite his criminal activities, Vario maintained a low profile and was known for his ability to evade law enforcement. His legacy as a key player in organized crime endures, leaving a lasting impact on the history of the American Mafia. Paul Vario was born on July 10, 1914, in New York City. At the age of 11, Paul Vario served a 7-month stretch for truancy. Over the years, he faced numerous arrests for offenses such as loan sharking, burglary, tax evasion, bribery, bookmaking, contempt, and assorted assaults and misdemeanors. As Vario gained power, many charges against him were dismissed due to witness failures or lenient judges opting for fines over jail time. Physically imposing at 6 feet tall and over 240 pounds, Vario appeared even larger. He was married twice and had 3 sons from his first marriage. One of his sons, Leonard, tragically died on July 20, 1973, from severe burns at Wyckoff Heights Medical Center in Brooklyn. The cause of Leonard's injuries remains unknown. At Leonard's funeral, 2 television cameramen and a police detective were beaten by mourners. As an adult, despite having only completed 2 years of high school, Paul Vario developed a penchant for reading, particularly enjoying medical and legal publications. During quiet moments, he found solace in listening to opera recordings. In 1937, a 16-year-old girl named Frances from Howard Beach accused a 23-year-old Vario and his friends of sexually assaulting her after she had left a church function. The charges against Vario and his friends were severe and garnered widespread attention in local newspapers. Of note was the allegation that Vario's associates had threatened to kill a witness, who was a friend of the victim, if she testified truthfully about the attack. The victim, however, identified Paul Vario and Anthony Romano as her attackers, but said she passed out and wasn't aware of being attacked by 3 others. Vario and Romano were convicted of the rape and sentenced to a term of 10 to 20 years in Sing Sing prison. Vario was paroled twice but returned to prison twice for various parole violations. It wasn't clear what Vario's new offenses were, but he had additional arrests in his life for burglary and dealing in stolen property. Vario finally earned a discharge from his state parole in 1962. In the 1960s, Vario took over as capo from Salvatore Curiali, the earliest known leader of the Lucchese family's Brooklyn crew. Curiali was an original Brooklyn mobster before the commission was created and would later join the Lucchese crime family. When Curiali stepped down, he proposed his closest ally Joseph Schiavo to be made the capo of the crew, but Schiavo did not want it and suggested his protégé Paul Vario be promoted instead. In the late 1960s, Vario was also serving as acting consigliere to Lucchese crime boss, Carmine Tramonti. In 1965, Paul Vario and 8 other men were arrested on Long Island for running a multi-million-dollar gambling ring. They were also charged with attempting to bribe a police officer who was supposed to be protecting the gamblers but was actually working undercover for the Suffolk County Police Commissioner for 10 months. Each of his next arrests burnished his reputation as a major up-and-coming player in the Lucchese crime family, which made him a better target for law enforcement. There was also the peculiar law that mandated individuals involved in gambling to purchase a federal stamp. In February 1966, Vario and several other men were charged in Brooklyn federal court for failing to procure the $50 stamp. Nassau County officials also targeted Vario's gambling operations and in June 1966 arrested him and 17 others on charges of running a $30 million a year bookmaking operation. Paul Vario, whom newspapers described as the Tsar of the Ring, wasn't the only mobster charged in the case. Also indicted was Stephen DePasquale of Atlantic Beach, who was described by police as a soldier in the Lucchese crime family. In 1970, Paul Vario was cited for contempt of court and sentenced to 9 months at the Nassau County Correctional Facility on Long Island. However, in June that year, he was indicted for bribery, rewarding official misconduct and promoting prison contraband. Local authorities in Brooklyn began to take a closer interest in Vario's activities, partly due to corruption revelations among police, spearheaded by Detective Frank Serpico, which led to the formation of the Knapp Commission in 1969. 2 years later, William McCarthy, the first deputy commissioner of the NYPD, initiated a complete overhaul of the undercover cops unit in Brooklyn due to widespread corruption. Following the reorganization, a new undercover unit observed what was believed to be organized crime activity at Gefkin's bar, particularly through the frequent presence of Vario and his associates. However, surveillance posed challenges as Gefkin's was located on a mainly residential block, making traditional police surveillance easily detectable. To blend in, police set up a Christmas tree business across the street and staffed it with undercover cops, allowing them to take breaks at Gefkin's and mingle with Vario's crew without arousing suspicion. The authorities also monitored conversations on a pay phone inside the building, which appeared to be related to sports betting. Charles J. Hines, a senior attorney in the Rackets Bureau of Brooklyn District Attorney Eugene Gold, and the police then executed a well-planned investigative strategy. They obtained a judicial warrant for a wiretap on the Gefkin's telephone and discovered that many calls were being made to another telephone at Vario's Canarsie junkyard. Subsequently, a second wiretap authorization was granted, revealing further conversations about sports betting. Vario's Bargain Auto Parts Incorporated, at 5702 Avenue D, was more than just a place for old cars and junkyard dogs. It served as a meeting spot for associates like Jimmy Burke and Henry Hill to pay their respects to the Lucchese capo. Investigators soon noticed that Vario was meeting with numerous mafiosi at the trailer he used as an office. In April 1972, a bugging device was planted in the trailer, allowing authorities to eavesdrop on Vario's conversations for months without his knowledge. Among those who visited Vario was 25-year-old Doug Levine Jr., a detective working for Brooklyn District Attorney Eugene Gold's office. Levine posed as a corrupt cop seeking to provide Vario with confidential investigative information. Levine received $450 in alleged bribes, which were vouchered as evidence and would later contribute to Vario's legal troubles. The gold bug investigation brought trouble for Vario, his son Paul, and his crime boss Carmine Tremonti. Vario and his associates, like Jimmy Burke, had long been able to influence police officers, and a few officers were also targeted by Brooklyn District Attorney Eugene Gold. A total of 102 officers were investigated for their visits to Vario's junkyard and suspected receipt of payment for various favors, such as allowing tow truck drivers to pick up abandoned cars, presumably to bring them to Bargain Auto Parts. However, only 2 officers, Detectives John Cuomo and Ralph Cacha, were indicted as a result of the gold bug tapes. Cacha was accused of meeting with Vario and 2 associates in the trailer, within earshot of the bugging device, and asking for a bribe of around $600 for himself and Cuomo. In addition to Levine's undercover activities, investigators compiled a mountain of evidence. Gold said that it was a window into a crime story bigger than Appalachian and the Valachi papers combined. Although he was besieged by numerous investigations, Vario wasn't afraid to put up a legal fight. After he was convicted in the gold bug case for giving money to a cop, Vario's attorney Joel Winograd appealed and argued that there was never any proof that undercover cop Doug Levine had actually been given any cash by Vario. In fact, during the trial Levine admitted that prosecutors had never tested the cash allegedly given by Vario. Having police officers in his pockets was an asset many crooks believed Burke had, and shared with Vario. Although New York City had been rocked by numerous revelations about police corruption during the Knapp Commission and witnessed cops getting indicted, in the cases of the gold bug it wasn't easy to make a case stick. As for Detective Cuomo, the court would eventually dismiss the indictment after it appeared that he didn't know anything about what his fellow officer had done in asking for an alleged bribe. The disposition of Kacha's case was never found. In October 1972, authorities raided Vario's junkyard in Canarsie, and by early 1973, Vario himself was facing multiple issues. His numerous gambling-related arrests had caught the attention of the IRS, leading to charges in mid-1972 for tax evasion on gambling income from 1965 and 1966 while operating a numbers operation in Inwood and Atlantic Beach on Long Island. On November 1, 1972, Vario led detectives on a 20-minute car chase through Brooklyn before he was arrested for witness tampering. In February 1973, Vario was convicted on conspiracy to evade federal income taxes on money from illegal gambling operations. In April 1973, Vario was sentenced to 6 years in prison and fined $20,000. He was sent to Lewisburg Penitentiary in Pennsylvania, considered a high-security prison about 200 miles from New York City. Lewisburg was known to be frequented by mafia members. Alongside Vario were John DioGuardi, a labor racketeer for the Lucchese crime family, and Vinnie Alloy, a prominent figure in the Colombo crime family following boss Joe Colombo's incapacitation. Also later at Lewisburg was Henry Hill. In November 1972, Burke and Hill were arrested for assaulting Gaspar Chacho in Tampa, Florida. Chacho purportedly owed a substantial gambling debt to their associate, union boss Casey Rosado. During this period, Hill's wife, Karen Hill, had an affair with Paul Vario. Hill and Burke began serving their 10-year sentence for the Tampa extortion in 1974. Jimmy Burke, however, served his sentence at a different prison. At the height of his criminal career, Paul Vario exerted dominion over Brownsville, East New York, akin to an urban kingpin. He commanded nearly all illicit gambling, loan sharking, labor rackets, and extortion operations in the vicinity. As a high-ranking member of the Lucchese crime family, Vario bore the responsibility of maintaining order among some of the city's most unruly individuals. He mollified grievances, mediated long-standing feuds, and resolved conflicts between the obstinate and the stubborn. Through his 4 brothers acting as his envoys and associates, Vario covertly oversaw several legitimate enterprises in the area, notably Presto Pizzeria, a sprawling restaurant and pizza establishment on Pitkin Avenue. Upon his release from federal prison in 1975, Paul Vario no longer held the position of consigliere. On May 7, 1974, Carmine Tramonti was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, after which Anthony Corallo became the indisputable boss of the Lucchese crime family. Following his parole, Vario moved to a residence near Miami, Florida. In 1978, while residing in Florida, Paul Vario authorized his crew to participate in the notorious Lufthansa heist at JFK Airport. The concept was proposed to Vario over the phone, and he promptly gave his approval, with the condition that Jimmy Burke, who was incarcerated at the time, oversee the operation. In December of that year, the crew successfully executed the heist, making off with an estimated $5 million in cash and $875,000 in jewelry. The Lufthansa heist was a robbery which took place at New York City's John F. Kennedy International Airport on December 11, 1978. At the time, it was the largest cash robbery committed on American soil. On January 14, 1979, Tommy DeSimone's wife, Angela, reported him missing, stating that she had last seen him a few weeks earlier when he borrowed $60 from her. Henry Hill became an FBI informant in 1980 and informed authorities that DeSimone had been murdered by the Gambino family. In 1994, Henry Hill elaborated on the events leading up to DeSimone's death in his book Gangsters and Goodfellas, noting that it was partly a result of DeSimone's attempted rape of Hill's wife. There was a theory that Vario reportedly took revenge by telling the Gambino crime family that Tommy was the one who killed mademan Billy Batts, a longtime friend of John Gotti. On February 9, 1984, Paul Vario was convicted of defrauding the federal government. Henry Hill, becoming a government witness, testified that Vario had arranged a fictitious restaurant job for Hill, which led to Hill's release from federal prison. Vario was sentenced to 4 years in prison and was fined $10,000, with the sentencing occurring on April 3, 1984. While serving his prison term, Vario faced another indictment on February 21, 1985, for involvement in a racketeering conspiracy related to extortion. He and his co-conspirators were accused of extorting over $350,000 from air cargo companies at JFK Airport by threatening them with labor disruptions if they refused to pay. On May 3, 1988, at the age of 73, Paul Vario succumbed to respiratory failure caused by lung cancer. He passed away while serving his sentence at the Fort Worth Federal Prison in Texas.